Hi everyone. In today's video I'm going to be discussing murder, obviously. I'm also going to be discussing eating disorders and suicide. So if today's video is not for you, that's okay. I'll have another one out and we'll see you in that video. Yeah, so just gonna get straight into it. Lane Gibbs lived in Killure in County Kilkenny with her husband, Gerard, her daughter, Ciara, and her son, Gearóid. They lived in a large gated home. They kept themselves to themselves. Some neighbours would later say that they weren't even aware that they had kids. Lynn was a psychiatrist and Gerard worked as a lecturer in aviation electrics. The couple met when they were teenagers. They were actually both from Ballypatrick in County Tipperary. Gerard came from a normal, loving, caring family, from what it seems. Lynn, however, didn't have the same upbringing. Her mother suffered from depression, and at the time it was not really talked about. She was also very overbearing with Lynn. She would tell her she wasn't pretty enough. She would tell her she was lazy. She was a failure. Lynn's mother, Iris, then would actually go on to commit suicide by drinking weed killer. Now, different sources say that at this time Lynn was 17 and 22. One of the sources says she was already in college and everything, and I think that's correct, but I could be wrong. Lynn would develop an eating disorder. She would develop anorexia. Now, I don't know if this happened before her mother died or if this was also as a result of her mother dying. But I'm going to read a quote out from a psychologist. So I lean to it already happened when her mother was still alive and, behaving the way she was behaving with her. Child psychologist Oliver James suggests that a mixed up parent can trigger an eating disorder. Says, in later life, having a perfectionist mother predicts a greater likelihood of bulimia if the daughter has low self-esteem. Mothers of bulimics are liable to be belittling and censorious, and since these are both significant causes of depression, it is not surprising that bulimics are liable to suffer from it. By contrast, anorexics tend to have confusing mothers who give mixed messages, similar to the mystifying double binds in which parents of schizophrenics may place their children. Indeed, compared with bulimics, anorexics are more likely to have delusions, which are a defining symptom of schizophrenia, most notably hallucinating an image of their body far larger than it actually is. Many anorexics probably have a weak sense of self and use not eating as a way of trying to be in control in a family where they feel they have none. When Lynn finished school, she went on to Trinity in Dublin and studied medicine. In the first year, she lived on campus, for the dorms, and then for the second year, she wanted more independence, so she rented a room in a house. However, her mental health deteriorated. She was struggling. She would attempt to take her own life by overdosing on pills. She would take a year out from college, but she would go back and she graduated in 1986. She then decided between paediatrics and psychiatry, and so she decided to go with psychiatry. Reports from the time of people who knew her say, varying accounts, so people say that she was very bright, she was unremarkable in every way. She was quiet, she was shy, she was, quote, nun-like, she was obsessed with her appearance and her clothes. So Lynn and Gerard got married, and then Ciara came along in 1990 and Gearóid came along in 92. So things were going well. She became, a successful psychiatrist. She was actually working in her own practice in St. Vincent's, from what I gather. Her husband obviously had a great job as well. They had a lot of money. They built this big, huge private house that they wanted. Their children were fantastic. Their children seemed to be encouraged to follow and exceed in, all expectations with whatever talents they had. Ciara was great with art and music, and she was a brilliant mathematician. In fact, the Department of Education chose Ciara, among thousands, to go and represent Ireland at the International's Mathematics Olympiad in Vietnam, which would be held in July 2007. And I'm going to assume that Gearóid was also very successful in the talents and skills that he enjoyed. She seemed to be a good mother. It seemed she was very caring, very loving, obviously wanted the best for the kids. It is said that maybe she was a bit overprotective, but this kind of obsession with her appearance and stuff continued. At one point, she actually got rid of the weighing scales in the house and would not allow another one to come back in. She was constantly looking for reassurance from her husband. So, you know, be asking kind of like, were her breasts too big? Were they too small? And that he would constantly have to be telling her, like, I've told you, like, they're perfect, you're perfect. You know, how many times are we going to go through this? When Lynn's depression became too much, she gave up her practice and then just became a locum in St. Luke's General Hospital, closer to them. However, in August 2006, she would actually take a leave of absence then completely due to health reasons. I don't know if this part happened first and then the next part, or if they both just coincided, happened at the exact same time. I'm not sure which one came first. Kira was 16, so she had done her junior cert that June. And she would go on to get 10 A's. So for anyone, I mean, everybody knows what A's are, so you know that 10 A's are fantastic. But like for your junior cert to get 10 A's, so she was incredibly intelligent in her school and just further afield as well. And as a reward for this, they allowed her to take part in an exchange program where she would go to France for 2 weeks. Different sources will say that it was because of the cuisine, you know, the different types of food. Like, I know people who've gone to France and they're just like, they just can't eat the French cuisine, so they end up kind of nearly living on like chips and burgers because that's all you could get kind of otherwise, you know, like American style. So it could have been a part of that, but also apparently the family she was staying with were very formal when it came to like meal times. So she didn't like this, so she would just kind of excuse herself from the meal times. So when she arrived back 2 weeks later, she was, you know, noticeably thinner. She had lost weight. One source then says that she obviously then realised that she could go without eating, and so possibly an eating disorder, anorexia, did start. I don't know how much was true and how much was in Lynn's mind. So basically Lynn became obsessed with this. She thought her daughter had anorexia and she wanted to monitor like everything she ate. She wanted her to see all these specialists and stuff. She wanted her to go to like St. Pat's to see a specialist and stuff. Kira obviously was just, you know, as a teenager would anyway, was like, no, like I don't want to do any of this. So she was rebelling and stuff. So obviously that just made the situation worse. And then Lynn, again, obviously kind of from this pressure and stress of worrying about Kira, she also then began to lose weight and she wasn't sleeping. On Saturday the 25th of November 2006, Lynn and Kira came up to Dublin. Now, one source says that they came up to a maths lecture in UCD, and another one says that it was in preparation for the competition thing that was going to happen in Vietnam, and that was in NUI Maynooth. So either way, they came up and went to one of the colleges, either Maynooth or in Dublin, and then they went shopping in Dublin. And Jared would actually say that Kira would text them disappointed because her and her brother Gerard had hoped to buy their mum a fur coat, but that when she was up in Grafton Street she couldn't see anything nice. So she was texting the dad kind of to give out about this. However, Jared and Gerard then had actually decided to spend that night down in Tipperary with his family, children's grandparents. And so when the girls got home then that night, one of Lynn's friends came by, Dr. Murray's Cheesty. Lynn had been telling her, you know, that she had been having thoughts of death and stuff, you know, here and there. She said that she didn't feel like she was going to act on it or anything, but she had just commented on this. So I don't know if this is why she had visited. She was concerned, obviously, because again, like that, friends and family were noticing that Lynn was losing all this weight, that she was, you know, just becoming depressed, down, no energy. She just wasn't herself. She had been prescribed 3 different antidepressants since this September, and none of them agreed with her. So after a week or so, she just came off each one of them. And Dr. Cheesy would say later that she did not believe her friend met the criteria to become an involuntary inpatient, and that she had planned to actually come the next day again to speak to Gerard about getting Lynn into a hospital. Her stepmother, Anna Hutchinson, would actually say that the family were all so concerned that they were all planning to meet on the 26th to do a plan to figure out what they needed to do. And so I don't know if Lynn knew any of this. And so Dr. Cheesy left late. I think she left at around 11:30. The following morning, Gerard and Gerard arrived home. And Gerard would say that the house was eerily quiet. He went through downstairs looking for them, calling out, nothing. And he went upstairs. And in the master bedroom, the door was open and he saw Lynn lying on the bed. And as he walked in to go over to her, he noticed a body slumped on the floor of the ensuite. And it was his daughter, Kira. He ran over to her. He said she looked like she was asleep. He touched her cheek and she was cold. Her clothes were also wet. The bath was full. obviously didn't know what to do and he's panicking, so he picks his daughter up and he puts her on the bed beside Lynn. And at this point he tells his son to go get help and starts mouth to mouth. But it's no use. It's too late. 14-year-old Garrod runs out onto the street, again obviously probably in a panic, and comes across a motorist who's on his way to church and tells him, help, come, there's been an accident at my house. And so he goes back with him, and when he arrives up, he sees the same scene. He notices that mother and daughter are both wet. He would say that his nephew was the chemist, the local chemist, so he runs off to get him, and him and his wife, who is a nurse, come back. As soon as they arrive, they call an ambulance. We might question why nobody else called an ambulance, but you don't know what you're going to do in that situation. You don't know how you would react. They call an ambulance. The nurse then decides that it's too late for Ciara and starts trying to focus on Lynn. Lynn does have a pulse and she's semi-conscious. She keeps going in and out of consciousness. And they eventually do get her semi-alert. When paramedics arrive and look at the scene, they immediately call Gardaí. Lynn would be brought to St. Luke's General Hospital and sedated. She had tried to overdose on pills again, and she would eventually be transferred to St. Pat's Psychiatric Hospital. Ciara had drowned and there were signs on her body of a struggle. There were no signs of breaking in the house. They had like a huge electronic gate and an alarm would have been rang, like alerted, if someone had tried to get through that gate. Ciara's funeral would take place at St. John the Baptist Church in Ballypatrick, Tipperary. School friends made pink pamphlets and handed them out to people. In it, they described Ciara as a rainbow. So I think from all accounts we can agree that Lynn was in a bad state. One of the sources says that at around 3 a.m. every night, our metabolism slows, and this is when we are at our weakest. And if you are prone to psychosis or anything, that this might be when it happens. It will be the 23rd of December before Lynn was able to speak to Gardaí. So obviously we don't know what happened. Lynn, when she was finally able to be questioned, would say that she doesn't really remember everything. One source says that she did go in and wake Ciara and drag her out of her bed. Another one says that they had gotten ready for bed after her friend had left, and that she then decided to run a bath for her daughter. She says she sort of remembers arguing with Ciara, and that she confesses that she drowned her in the bathtub. The Gardaí would charge her with the murder of her daughter, and the case would come to trial in January 2008. The trial was unusual because both the defence and the prosecution wanted her to be found not guilty by reason of insanity. The prosecution knew as well that she didn't deserve to be convicted of murder because she didn't realise what she was doing was wrong. She believed that her daughter was suffering from anorexia, and whether that was true or not, even in part, she believed that by drowning her, she was saving her from like a lifetime of despair. Obviously looking at her own life and not wanting her to go through that. This is what all the experts at the court say. Her friends and colleagues who were psychiatrists, you know, some of them would come forward and say they feel guilty because they didn't see the signs. Then obviously some were trying to help. When her husband Jared was in the witness box, he would cry and say she loved Ciara. The prosecution didn't even make a closing statement. Dr. Cleo Van Velsen, a renowned London psychiatrist, said in the months leading up to the tragedy that Lynn had become, quote, pathologically identified with her daughter and had found it difficult to see where she left off and her daughter began. Lynn's younger sister, Kathleen, would talk about how she had saw the difference in her sister, losing weight, not sleeping, no energy, and that she was just like extremely obsessed with Ciara and her weight. Lynn Gibbs was found not guilty of murder by reason of insanity, and she was sentenced to be kept at the Central Mental Hospital until it was deemed that she was fit to return to society. I have tried to look and I can't see anything. It's been like 15 years, so it's not unusual that she could still be in there. Andrea Yates has been in. She drowned her 5 children and she has been in since the 90s, I believe, and it doesn't look like she'll ever be released. So I don't know if that's the case for Lynn. That's really all there is in this story. It was quite a heavy one, and it's very sad because when I first read it was like, oh, the psychiatrist that drowned her daughter. And you're like, oh, but like, you know, it wasn't that simple, and there was a lot to it. And it's very sad because we do see this a lot, and I think it's becoming more prevalent in Ireland. It hasn't been, you know, it's been kind of, obviously America's for bigger countries, so it's been going on there longer, but we do seem to be seeing more cases of familicide for both sides, and then like that killing a child. And I did say in one of the videos that when men kill their families or children, it's different than when women kill their children. For men, it's almost like it's a last act of control, whereas for women, it's deemed like it's a last act of mercy. I will link that video so you can go back and watch that one if you want, but that is a case of familicide, so just so that you're aware. That's really it, guys, I think. I'm not going to ramble. Thank you for watching. Please let me know what you think of this case. Let me know what you think of the video, you know, I hope you're all keeping safe. And we shall see you in the next video. Thanks. Bye.